All right, it is 2 o'clock and this meeting is called to order. 4 out of 5 of our trustees are here. Trustee Robinson, she would not be able to make it. Our attorney is here. The treasurer is here. Let's see, do I need to turn Karen?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, Karen, the other
Yeah.
is going to be our secretary of notes secretary today. All right, and before we get to discussion, I'd like to encourage everyone to be as concise as possible with their comments, questions, just so that we can have as much time for the budget as possible. Our first item is discussion of library clerks for minors. And what our legal counsel has to say.
Yeah, library cards for minors. The main thing that I noticed with this policy that makes it subjected to a heightened risk of litigation is contained in paragraph 6, which limits open access library cards to patrons aged 18 or older. We're not entirely clear on the scope of what minors' rights, constitutional rights to access to information in public libraries are going to be. Ernest Nick, Reno, American Booksellers Association versus Virginia, Pico, Ginsburg. All those cases have been cobbled together. The courts are still struggling with it, but there's no support that I found in federal law that allows a general prohibition for minors to the general access section of a library. And so I believe that if we didn't pass the policy as is with paragraph 6, that we would more likely than not be subject to a federal lawsuit based upon that ground and also the grounds of the overbreadth doctrine. So that's it in a nutshell.
Over what?
Overbreadth.
Is that
So it'd have to be carefully crafted and neutral in terms of its viewpoint and content.
Just Kim.
So I'm thinking along with, our attorney is saying, I want to refer to the first paragraph of our library cards for minors policy, which states, parents and legal guardians may authorize their children under the age of 18 to have their own library card. The extent to which a minor child has access to the library's collection is the responsibility of their parent or legal guardian. So I would propose that we would, point number 4, where it says parents or legal guardians may choose one of 3 ways. I would like to change that to 4 ways. And I would like to admit again, open access to the entire collection, including access to the collections of the corporate information network as an option. And I say that is because I don't feel that we can police all the children and that parents do have the ultimate responsibility to choose what kind of card they want for their minor. And so I feel that that needs to be another option for that very reason. When I was in junior high, I did a report on the Hiroshima bomb, or Hiroshima, however you want to say that. And I know I went to the library wherever to get as much information for my report, and I was age 13 or 14. And so to say that ages 13 and 15 or 0 through 17 can only get their information in this section, I feel is too restricted. I mean, if the parent, what I'm saying is all these different options are great. And we have the HB 710 as a safeguard that any material that is harmful, that it is to be out of that section. But I believe it's the parent's responsibility and the parent's rights to choose which avenue for the needs of their children in that respect.
Trustee Blas?
So the only way to do that with the Idaho law that I see is we have to make a special closed off section outside of the open access that has these adult X-rated, R-rated books. We cannot let, by Idaho law, even if they've got one of these cards for open access and the parent gave it to them, Idaho law prevents us from letting minors go get material harmful to them. And that's what the open access card does. If the parent is with him, that's different. But what's the point of having an open access card if you have to have the parent tag along with you? So I see where we, legal counsel, I don't see where we have any choice. We have to do that unless we take on making the adult X-rated, R-rated, other harmful to minor books in a separate place that's closed off to open access. That's almost another policy, I think.
Interim director?
Bill 710 does say that we need to restrict access to harmful to minors material, but we have to remember that it has to be legally declared harmful to minor. It has to go through the Miller test. It has to not be based on personal preferences and opinions. And we do not have X-rated or R-rated material in our children's collection. We don't have X-rated material. That might be someone's personal opinion, but on the whole, we don't have that. And so until something is deemed harmful to minors through like the legal process, that is when it would get moved into the adult only section, not just because of personal preference and opinion.
Trustee Hanley?
Even if CLN did not have any materials harmful to minors, at least in the minors areas, if a minor gets a full access regular adult card, they can order anything that is in a CIN, which is any library, including Coeur d'Alene and including out of state. And out of state does not have the same law as we have in Idaho. So that throws a little, something in the ointment here is a problem. I see that as we're leaving an open door for minors to get access to materials out of state. We are providing them. We are providing materials harmful to minors. We're making it available. So it's a problem.
So interim director, is there wording for, that would balance, things so that kids would have open access to what's in the CLN system, but not be able to order something from CIN? Yep, question.
I mean, right now, when a parent requests a limited access card, it does not give access to the CIN collection.
Yes.
So again, if a parent chooses that, then they would not get those items. If a parent decides to give their child open access, they would get those items as well. And there isn't a way that I know that we would be able to limit that. One thing to consider is that there are other policies that the board might want to look at, including children in the library policy, where we require that a parent be with their child if we're truly concerned about accessing harmful to minor material. There are other ways to look at this. We could also toughen up our library card application process and not have school cards or outreach cards where the parent signs off at home, but the parent must be present to get the card. So there are other things we can do other than simply putting a ban on accessing the entire collection.
Trustee Campbell?
So I have a question. We talk about the limited access cards can be linked to a parent or a guardian card if they have one. Does that also apply to if a parent wants their child to have open access? Can that also be linked to the parent and guardian?
Yes, that's available anytime there's a parent signing up as a guarantor on the card, which is a requirement, regardless of the type of card.
Trustee Claus?
So I don't see how any of these are options, because once the child has the card, the minor, they can come into the library without the parent. Even if the parent said they can have the card, they can come into the library and get X-rated material from the adult section. I didn't say in the children's section, from the adult section that is in the open access. If it's in the open access, they can get to it. And I don't see how Idaho law could possibly allow us to give them open access when we have that material there. The only option is close that, make it X-rated or a R-rated, X-rated adult section that's closed off to open access. Then I'm okay with giving them this, but, and not allowing it, even if the parent says they can get order books from CIN. They can't, the books are there. Liberty Lake in Washington doesn't have this law. They could order those books. And we cannot give them access by Idaho law. I don't see how legal counsel can disagree with that.
See, Hallie?
Yeah, my question's related for legal counsel. I'm trying to understand, a parent cannot give a child permission to buy cigarettes, even though they're sitting in the car outside the 7-Eleven and tell the kid, go in and buy them for me. I'm gonna smoke them, not you. They can't vote. They could be driving on the racetrack down here around now since the time they were 6 years old, and be a professional driver at 12, but they can't be given a driver's license. Trying to understand, why is it different to give a child majority or adult status when they're not actually an adult? I'm trying to understand, because there are a lot of things, whether it's voting, joining the military, going buy cigarettes, buying liquor, driver's licenses, and why is that different? And when it comes to a library book, and we have to be cautious about what access is given to minors, why are we restricted from doing that? I don't understand that.
I think maybe the easiest way to understand, if using that analogy, there's different ages. So you can drive at 16, you can vote at 18, and you can buy cigarettes at 18 to 21. And so the state uses their parents patriae and their police power, health and safety, different powers that the state has to regulate types of conduct related to the health and safety. Now, the First Amendment does have some health and safety concerns in it, like harmful to minors, because they see material that the legislature's judged as harmful to minors. But the majority of the books in the library are not going to be even close to considered under that statute. And so my concern here is not the fringe of what can be accessed, it's the overbreadth of the restriction. And so a 17-year-old, I think Trustee Robinson said, unless their parent comes in and gets them an open access card, they couldn't come in and get innocuous materials like cookbooks or book reports. And that's a valid concern because parental rights need to be protected. So we need to allow an avenue for parents to be more restrictive or less restrictive without banning, or whatever term you want to use, access to materials these minors already have access to. So if you pass a policy that says the 17-year-old now can no longer have the card they have, that 17-year-old will find a nonprofit and will sue the library, and they will win and they will get attorney fees. And they're looking for test cases. And it comes out of the Erzenik and the Reno cases where looking at the internet and the SEPA and all the protections that we have to get certain federal funds, the Supreme Court's anticipating that there's going to be age groups within the coverages of the statutes. And so if we're not even contemplating age groups as it relates to the material, and we just do a blanket ban on minors in general, for minors that already have access, then that's not going to be narrowly tailored. So the issue isn't restricting X-rated material, which is defined as pornographic, which would be appealing to the prurient interests of a child. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have some sort of redeeming political, scientific, artistic value, right? So we need to capture that entire analysis. And so a reasonable effort wouldn't be violating constitutional law. A reasonable effort would be getting somewhere close, but not going past that line, right? So maybe we violated a little bit, but we don't clearly, patently, facially violate. So we can go a little bit too far, and that might be reason. But if we're clearly way beyond that, which a blanket prohibition on a 17-year-old to have access to the entire library, we're approaching that. That's that. And so I think we could find the next step and take an accommodation for them to preserve their ability to access this information they already have access to. And then we're removing one of those check marks for me on the constitutional test, if that makes sense. And we can grapple with, are we providing access to material harmful to minor by giving them CIN or cooperative access to libraries? We can grapple with that by instituting a process targeted for that. But I don't think no under 18 cards is targeted to that concern. Does that make sense? There's no legal way to defend telling a 17-year-old they can't have a cookbook because we're concerned they'll access material on the CIN.
Well, some of the libraries in Idaho have just simply put a sign at the entrance, under 18 not allowed. And because that's their solution to not let them wander around and get this material, rather than do it. I still think we have, if we're going to do this, we should put a sign up not allowing under 18 there until we get a section that puts the X-rated adult books into behind locked doors. And no one in the library in the past has done that. This was an attempt, I thought, but I don't think that belongs in this policy, but we need adult only X-rated books locked up.
Interim director.
I would just like to remind everyone that we've had the tools in place since July 1st for House Bill 710 to put these requests for relocation because something is X-rated, pornographic, harmful to minors, and we've not received a single request. So to me, I don't know that I can actually say there is not that material in this library. So again, you would need to very clearly define what is legally deemed pornographic, which our attorney just said is very difficult to do because even some pornographic material has a valid use in the community and is seen as art or for learning purposes. So it's again getting down to what an individual believes is pornographic versus what the law believes. And we don't have anyone turning in those forms. We don't have that material in our collection. So we can't just go and say that book goes in the X-rated section and that one goes over there too. We can't do that. We provide access to everyone.
Well, I know that the board has heard many books read in previous board meetings that were just awful and had to have been would be classified as harmful materials, and I don't want kids to have to be harmed first before we protect them. Anyway, so I'm just looking for the middle ground. Trustee Campbell?
The way I understand this, again, that we have safeguards in place. We have the AC 710 that's there to ensure that the harmful information is out of the children's section or the minor section. We also have point A, B, and C talking about the different limited access cards that a child can, or that a parent will allow their child to have. And so again, for me, it boils down to, okay, if they're under 18, then for them to have a card of their own, they have to have a parent's permission, correct? Right? And so again, it will be the parent's responsibility and the parent's rights to decide what card that child should have. And they, like I said, HB 710 is in place. These other limited access cards, we've got that in place for the different ages and what categories that they can enjoy checking out from. So I just, again, for me, it's parents' responsibility. And again, also too, even if they do say, my child will do well with an open access card. But I want that card linked to my card, so I know what's being checked out, what's being seen or whatever. And that's another safe one.
So I think we're not going to, resolve this in the next 30 seconds, but we'll take one more comment from trustee Claus.
The House bill that we've got the safeguards and protection for is in the children's section. Open access is adult section. I am never going to agree to give a child, whether a parent thinks it's okay or not, if we've got a House bill saying children, minors cannot be given access by CLN to harmful material, we should not be giving them a card, even if the parent says it's okay. Because we're at risk for what they're doing. So let's lock up, make another policy to lock up the adult. I'm talking about steamy romance novels that have no cultural value, have no artistic value, no scientific value. I'm sure we have lots of steamy romance novels in the adult section that have no value for minors.
One more quick comment, if you don't mind. It's pretty short.
So quick.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering also, can we create, if there's such a thing, we have the general collection and we have all the 3 different levels of limited access cards. Maybe we can have a classified bunch of books that are all considered adult as a separate, and they're not allowed to check those out. Only a parent, only a person 18 and older can. That doesn't limit them to have access to the entire library, which would cause legal risk.
Okay, so everyone continue to think about, ways to come out with the proper balance for this, and moving on to the next item, just, subscriptions approval. Okay, Joanna?
We gotta do one at a time, because I have not many, very, very few comments from me. So I don't know if we're gonna do one PD at a time, position description at a time, or how do you wanna approach it?
Well, we had 5 minutes scheduled for this, and there was just the one that we didn't have the opportunity to read last time, it was the circulation supervisor. That was the new one. So I thought,
Right.
start with that.
Well, I have typos in 2 things,
Okay, well,
so whatever you
our
want. Okay.
circulation supervisor. There in the position summary, it refers to the library manager twice, but I thought that we were changing that to library supervisor.
Yeah, so this position is only at the larger libraries that actually have a library manager, not a library supervisor. I could go in there and put library manager or supervisor if that would be preferred, but right now those smaller libraries don't have this position.
I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure. Okay, just one.
I only have one, like at the typo we showed, it's on several of them, there's probably a cut and paste issue. If we go to the other duties and responsibilities, the last bullet point on there says may participates in, it should just be participate. And that's on, I think at least 3 of these, I'm not sure, I have them all marked. It's a minor issue, but if you're looking to make it clean, that was that I thought, and a little plus mark here. Oh, and the last bullet point under position requirements or special qualifications, I wasn't sure I understood the need for a commercial driver's license for 2 reasons. One is, I don't know if that's typical in the job, but number 2, we're getting rid of the vehicle, so that would be a big impediment for a person to apply for a job. that maybe doesn't have or can't qualify for a CDL. So I'm just curious as to the need for the last bullet, acquire and maintain a valid commercial driver's license as a circulation supervisor.
This position was, I think I used a previous position to create this, and, that position required that, so I just need to get rid of that, and it's especially true if we are indeed, restructuring our outreach.
Then, in the same situation was supervisor on the first page under examples of work, third bullet point, and it says informational needs and the statutory reason for existence of libraries is educational needs. So I would like to change that. Do we need to have consensus on that or is that?
You could just say that you move forward with changes that's noted.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was all I had other than also there's the space where it should be. But I had it just got an extra estimate. Anything else, trustee Box?
Just to make sure, I made the comment last time, but on the facility coordinator, position summary, I'd like develops emergency checklist and updates, develops and updates emergency checklist.
So you want to say develops and updates emergency checklist?
I think that'd be simplest.
Okay.
As we learn more, I mean, if, it would be something like if temperature is expected to be below 0 Fahrenheit, remove, every 10th ceiling tile or something like the sprinklers. Just so somebody remembers and looks at it.
Trustee Henry?
One more miniature grammatical, on the library supervisor. Like to find that, again, very minor, it's a comma, under position summary. Close to the last sentence there, the one before last, it says supervisor working in concert with the assistant director. I think there probably should be a comma there, exercises independent judgment and initiative. I don't need a vote on it. If it's correct grammar, add it in. If it's not, I'm okay.
I did read them all.
Okay, so if there are no further alterations, I have to accept the presented job descriptions as altered.
Yes.
All those in favor, say aye.
I
Okay. That's Hanley, or you said yes.
Yes.
All right, so it is unanimous and the job descriptions are accepted as altered. All right, so now we are going on to description of authority to fill open positions. Neat. All right, so I don't want to make things harder on the staff. However, interim director isn't mentioned in the statutes or the personnel policy. We have unresolved budget issues and are discussing reduction in force, or at least reducing staff and other adjustments. And the newly hired director should be able to choose his team who he thinks is best to work with. So I move that the interim director may not fill any positions, but may temporarily utilize any current employees who've been trained until the hiring freeze and budget issues are resolved. Say that a lot, sorry.
So
Just nod when you talk about it. So, I move that the interim director may not fill any positions, but may temporarily utilize any current employees who've been trained until the hiring freeze and budget issues are resolved. Interim director?
This comes as a surprise to me, and I am doing all of the work of the director, and so I find it strange that one of those tasks are now being pulled away. I also believe that this is a great overreach on the board's part because they are to employ a director, which you could then transition to interim director. And it's the director and interim director to hire the staff. I also believe that if there is budgetary concern regarding the rest of this fiscal year, it would be lovely to have a phone conversation about that and to assume that the library is going to be run to the best of its abilities and that hiring decisions that will put us in a difficult spot are not planned. And then I think the final thing is like if to me, it does make sense that the new director would want to hire a business manager because that person's gonna work so closely with the director. And if that's the case, then just simply a phone call stating we should pause that one position, I can totally understand. But limiting all staffing hiring right now is difficult. And I'm also being very mindful of hiring people, knowing that we are going to have potential layoffs and those people might be able to fill the vacant positions. So I guess I would just like the board to know that knowledge and great understanding is going into this process and to assume that good work is being done.
Spots?
I would, look to amend the motion. And I didn't get the wording down, but to word it, to instead of wording it, all hiring, say, hiring of senior staff positions and permanent and senior staff positions. I don't mind temporaries or fill in, but I think it's senior staff and permanent positions that I guess I'd like to substitute into that.
Okay, so you would like to replace the word any and fill any positions to permanent and senior staff, so it would read,
Yeah.
I move that the interim director may not fill permanent and senior staff positions, but may temporarily utilize any current employees who've been trained and until the, until the hiring freeze and budget issues are resolved.
You know,
Okay, discussion on the amendment.
I didn't know my microphone. Well, whatever way you had it written, it sounded as if we already had a hiring freeze in place, I think. And we don't. So but whether it's the wording or whatever, we don't, unless we're instituting a hiring freeze, what the wording sounded as if we already have one in place. So I'm a little confused on the wording on that, that's all. So, but I'm open to, if there's, I don't even know how many open positions there are right now. So are we discussing 1 or 10 or what? So it's a little difficult to make a decision on this, absent a little more detail, but I don't want to hamper library operations on the beyond reason. So the impact on what we're word crafting and wordsmithing there, I'm not really sure the impact on it. So, but I'll let you go ahead and I'm not making an amendment to the motion.
Okay, I guess, well, yeah, actually, we're just supposed to be talking about the
Yeah,
amendment
I think
first.
Yeah, I got off track, sorry.
Interim director?
The library does not hire temporary or permanent staff. All staff are hired as permanent. So having that distinction is not really helpful. I think to me, if you want to say any staff above a certain pay grade to clearly identify staff that are senior would be helpful. Or if you want to leave it as senior staff, that would be helpful. I know, for example, we have a 40-hour position for a circulation supervisor that desperately needs to be filled. That will probably be filled internally, which will then cascade into needing to fill that person's position. Those are all permanent, but they are not senior. So to me, I would be asking the board, to me, that sounds okay that I can fill That's because they're not senior positions.
Correct? Trustee Claus?
But when I said permanent for on the amendment, but we were hiring some people that we felt were gonna get laid off because of the reorganization at the new FY year.
Interim director?
For the last 6 months, we've been very careful about hiring and, there is a document that's tracking our vacant positions. And we have a document that's showing who might be able on the existing staff, be able to move into those should we have layoffs. So I would not be hiring anyone that I knew that position would be going away, because I think that's not good practice. And so, we haven't really ever had a conversation like this. I think it's good that we're talking, but, no positions that would be hired are ones that would be laid off.
Trustee Henley?
Yeah, are we in discussion a little bit? Because my mind right now is saying maybe we just authorize specific positions to be filled as requested by the director. And I said, thumbs up or thumbs down, we don't do the hiring. So we can say because it's within our authority for budgetary purposes, if that's the case, we're instituting a hiring freeze with exceptions as approved by the board. I don't know if that would work to achieve
Point of order. So
The trustee was here, his point of order.
we should be talking about the amendment.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure that the amendment is necessary because I, in my motion said that she can temporarily utilize any of the current employees. And just that way, they'd be utilized, we wouldn't be hiring new people. We already have people who are familiar with the network and, anyone who's qualified to do that. Anyway, I think that the new director should be able to hire permanent employees.
So were you voting on the amendment?
I
don't know.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Trustee Claus?
I would say it's probably okay. Stock shelves and maybe driving the books back and forth between libraries or something. It's probably, if we need that to hire that now, not wait for the lower levels. I don't think the new director is going to, well, maybe I'm wrong. If we need people to restock shelves now, and we aren't hiring temporary, then I'm willing to open that up.
I think that we're moving the number of employees down 106 down to 70. So I would hate to hire new people and then have the old people get canned.
And that's what we're not gonna do.
Okay, Trustee Campbell?
With the amendment, what if we just said, the interim director, will not hire senior staff?
What's defined as senior staff?
Yeah, that's,
You need to pick the pay grade on the budget sheets. And identify a pay grade that you don't want anyone higher.
sure.
Trustee Claus?
How many employees do we have on the payroll right now? Is, I guess, the question. If we are going to 76, are we kind of there now?
Interim director?
We are definitely close to that. The problem is that we have some positions that will be laid off that are unable to morph into higher, status positions because of the skill sets that they have. And so those are gonna be the positions that we will need to hire a few. We don't have anyone that we can. And so, I don't know, what was your question again?
How many employees are on the payroll?
I want to say right now we have about 85. but I can't say that for sure.
Then I would just maybe leave it without the amendment. I would just say no more hiring. At this point, I would withdraw my amendment and just keep it that, because it sounds like we're gonna have to lay off anyway.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't want to bring on new ones until this gets sorted out by the director.
Is it open for discussion?
The amendment has been withdrawn, so we're back to discussing the original. Trustee Henry?
Are we in financial expense? I need to understand the catalyst, what's driving this at the moment. I mean, obviously, I would say I wouldn't like to see any new senior staff, however we define that, hired in the absence of a new permanent director. But is there a financial situation necessitating hiring freeze essentially?
That is one part of it. It's not the whole thing. Yeah, just the unresolved budget issues, the carry forward and, balancing the budget and talking about layoffs. It's just, interim director.
I just want to refer everyone to last week's budgetary packet. And if you look at line 25, we are at 67.82% spent, and we should be at 75%. So we're actually underspent for salaries and benefits. So in my opinion, we do not have a budgetary price.
Maybe not that line item.
Trustee Henry?
Maybe not for that one line item. That's one line item among many. So if our bottom line is suffering, we have to look at line items, individual line items.
Okay, Boss?
Real quick, my motivation for wanting to do this is 99%. I want the new library director to right his ship the way he wants it to be. We're setting the budget and he'll have that to work with, but I think that he should pick the people.
So we are over time. You guys ready for me to read the motion again?
I'd like to hear it again, yeah.
Okay. It's been moved that the interim director may not fill any positions, but may temporarily utilize any current employees who've been trained until the hiring freeze and budget issues are resolved. So, Trustee Henry?
Should we consider adding, I'm saying consider with exceptions as approved by the board? That's our last part of it, because if we find out we're missing some critical position being filled, I don't want to put an undue burden and expectation on the interim director not fill the position. So I'm just wondering if we should leave a caveat or a ability in there to say with exceptions as approved by the board.
Okay.
If you think that's necessary, if it's not, I won't make a motion.
If that's the case, then she would already have to bring it to the board, so she can just bring it to the board.
Okay, that's my only discussion.
There is no further discussion. It has been moved that the interim director may not fill any positions, but may temporarily utilize any current employees who've been trained until the hiring freeze and budget issues are resolved. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it is unanimous and the motion passes, that the interim director may not fill any positions, but may temporarily utilize any current employees who've been trained until the hiring freeze and budget issues are resolved. Next item is discussion of carry forward, and I'm hoping that the treasurer can enlighten our understanding.
Well, first off, I'm really thankful to our business manager, Janelle. She has taken the time, and newer, and obviously there's a history that I'm not aware of that it's gonna take some time for me to figure out, but she's been very, forthcoming and professional, and I've been super grateful for that. And even this week, meeting with her, I know there were some questions that were brought up, I believe it was last week, with the carry forward. in going over it with, the business manager, there was a packet that was presented. Again, Janelle was kind enough, she kind of redid, the worksheet, what I had noticed, and maybe it was just me and I didn't realize it last week. The carry forward that was presented with the checking account balance of June 30th, I believe, initially, was with a 6-month projection, which those estimated funds available, these were prior to January 2025 property taxes, which that large of a projection, definitely shifts those numbers. And it was a different format that had been presented, I believe, in previous meetings. And so what I had spoken with Janelle about was doing an apples to apples projection from what she has been presenting in carry forwards. So she went ahead and did that. And so that short term, June 30th, 2024 worksheet that is also presented is now showing essentially a 1-month differential, instead of that 6-month projection, with funds available prior to July 20. And so, one thing too that I don't know if there was confusion on, I understand that some people who don't understand necessarily numbers and how it works. I know a simple thing as in her worksheet, she put the parentheses, which wasn't in the previous worksheets, but it still is negative. It's still the deduction of the expenses from the revenue. Another, if I can answer one more thing that was asked last week, I believe trustee Cost too was wondering about if the insurance was part of that deduction. When I went back and looked on the May 31st carry forward worksheet, we did find that the ICRIM claim funds was received at the $773,957.07. And there was a question regarding who was paying, if ICRIM was paying directly, if it was coming to us, and Janelle was able to clarify for me that the initial payment during remediation was received, it was paid out by ICRIM. And that was the money for the repairs, and then the balance of contract and the pack and move, which I know she was explaining that a little bit last month. But from that point on, we have received the money and it's been in the ICS account, and we pay as those bills come in. So, but I understand that there are other questions since getting this, and I know that there's questions about some of the history. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to go through and maybe look at more things specifically. But I hope this makes sense with the 1-month differential instead of the 6 months. It might help you see apples to apple comparison. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'll leave it at that for now.
Trustee Claus?
Well, I appreciate our treasurer going in and digging into it. I looked through it more and I came to the realization that I don't know if others did, that for the July payment, this is an invalid calculation. Would only be valid if both January payment from the county and July payment from county were the same. But every year, the January payment is significantly higher. It's like 2/3, and then the July payment is 1/3, maybe not quite that extreme. And I think it's talking with the auditor's office. I think it's because a lot of people just choose to write one check and just pay for the whole year. So that money comes in January. So that is why we were showing 800,000 over because we got more money in January. And now I did go and get the number from the auditor office. It was emailed to me yesterday, Alicia Lynch. On tomorrow, Thursday, the 25th, we will get a check, or it's gonna, I don't know when we get the check, but it'll be $1,780,922.24. And that's actually lower than what this estimate is here on the sheet that I was questioning last time. But it doesn't include additional payments they'll give us in August and September. There's only 2 other months that they'll give us, so it's not a lot more. It might be 100,000, it might be 200,000, but anyway, I believe this was a good estimate last month. What I am questioning, and I was hoping the business manager would be here, and I think I asked about it last time, but this item, estimated expenditures for July 1st through September 30th, $2,165,321. So that's 3 months. Why is that so much bigger than the burn rate that is used like 2 lines down for the 4 months, October through January? 1,900,000 for 4 months. This is much bigger than that for 3 months. So that burn rate is 475 per month, basically. So it should be, I think it should be on that line, 1,425,000 instead of 2,165,000. And I don't know if anyone can answer why that line is so big. If we use the burn rate used down below, we come up with like 302,000 short of the 2 months extra. And I just wanted to clarify that this, when they started doing this sheet, it was put down like it is required that you have 2 months. When I started this during the budget season last year, I called Steve Matheson, the county treasurer, and he told me that the guideline is should be no more than 2 months. You shouldn't be taking more money from the taxpayers than 2 months worth. So that is, it's okay to be less than 2 months. Maybe 1 to 2 months is the goal, but he said, don't take more than 2 months. So I don't want to aim for 2 months. I want to aim for not more than 2 months. So this would be like 1.33 months. We're still short, but I would like to get someone to answer why that estimate for July, which now July is almost all done. July through September is 2.165 million. That's much higher.
Aaron Dryden?
This is one of our heaviest spending seasons. It's because there's usually an increase in utilities, there's an increase in landscape. This is when we complete a lot of projects that we weren't able to complete in the winter. We also do a very large IT computer equipment purchase during this time of the year. So a lot of big things happen in the last quarter of the year. And so that's why the burn rate, as you say, is higher because of those things that we are expending that we didn't in the past.
Those thoughts?
So these are all things that should be way low in percent spent now, like telecom, tech, office. I see that right now, the end of June is 79%. Where would this money be coming from? I don't see anything that's really low. Outreach vehicles is low, but I think this estimate is wrong.
Again, just a reminder, again, these are projections, but if you go back to the July, the apples to apples that Janelle did at the bottom too, she does let us know that it's not uncommon to have extra carry forward at this time. There will be significant seasonal expenditures in the coming months that will reduce this balance. My understanding is, in just conversations with the business managers, there were some bigger checks that were paid, just even this past month, even when I was going through, putting the deposits in the ledger. So we might see it coming next month. I don't know if that is to trend with previous years, but that would be my expectation, that we would see that, maybe balance out. Again, I know the business manager isn't here to get full clarification.
Ms. Cox?
So to reiterate, everything based on the January payment and the balance before June is worthless, basically, because it's all based on a high payment. So I don't even want to look at that. I don't even think we should make the sheets until budget time, because it's misleading. It misled us all the last 6 months. What matters is, what is it going to be on September 30th when we go into the next year? And that has to be based on the July payment we receive on Thursday, tomorrow. And it really does matter what that number is, because if it's right, we're 2 months short of having 2 months extra, which means we're very close to having zero come July or January 31st. It really does matter. It isn't, we have to get this figured out, because we cannot go to less than zero. So I think the number's too high, and I don't know what else is wrong with the sheet. I think maybe, one thing that we didn't budget for is all this money for severance payment, and it seems kind of high to me. Seems like 6 months severance salary maybe is 66,000. There was 15,000 moving expense. That's 81,000. I don't know why there's an extra 16,000 in there, but that's much less than this next line item, which is very high. And that's where we have to focus, is why is that so high?
Interim director?
First thing, I don't think we're supposed to be discussing severance in such detail, but I'm not entirely certain. If you review the contract that was signed, you will see all of the other expenses that the board agrees to pay in that package, and it does equal that amount. It is accurate. If you look on last week's budget green sheets, line 79 is our total, line 80 is our total expenditures, and we're only at 62% of 75% that we should be spent. So as I said earlier, there are facilities projects, there are IT equipment projects, there is repair and maintenance. All of these things really ramp up during this time of year. And we are underspent right now, which is pretty standard. And then we will be spending more and more as we get closer to the end of the year, because that's just how things flow in the running of the library. And I will also say that I believe that carry forward sheets were created at the request of the board. I do not remember that we used to do them monthly. So if the board is not wanting those, they can make that known. I believe it was an agreement between the board and the previous director.
Trustee Cox?
Well, I think we did ask for them and it was helpful, we thought, but now that I see that it's based on a 2/3 payment in January, I think it's misleading and I guess it doesn't hurt to have it, but we just need to know that the number is misleading. If there's expenses coming up, maybe the board needs to make a motion to stop spending on something that we could, afford to not do. I don't know what projects are. We have the capital asset, numbers that we were gonna spend at Harrison and stuff. That's already subtracted out, so that's not part of it. But if that number is really right, we're cutting our savings down to nothing. And I don't think that number is right, but we should really concentrate on that. And it isn't next year's budget, it's this year's. We need to take some kind of action to get that under control.
Okay, so I'm glad that I understand that there's not the $1.6 million discrepancy that I thought there was. It's just different timeframes. But I think that potentially staff could figure out the best places to slow down on spending until we figure out things. Trustee Hanley?
It's basically for the treasurer and the interim director, so do you as well project that we are gonna be basically down to almost a zero balance by January? I mean, do you agree that this is what this report is telling us here?
Interim director?
This report is the report that the administrative team uses all year long. This was just presented to the trustees. So this is how we plan our entire year. It is not surprising. It is not shocking. We are not in a bad financial place. This is just literally what we use to guide us in the forthcoming months. So I don't know. I don't see that we're in a financial crisis right now. We just have our expenses accounted for. We have our income accounted for. And then we have we have that 51,000 left over, which is not a huge number, but it's also not tiny. And then we have just enough to get us through January until we get our next tax payment.
Right, so you're over time for this. So shall we move on? Treasurer?
To answer your question, trustee Hanley, I also agree with that, and I think that Janelle did show me that that's what she's been using, and it's been the spreadsheet, and they calculate different percentages. And I also, from what I am seeing, I believe that we are looking okay until that property tax comes into. That number seems like a safe, good number, in my opinion, as well.
Last comment, and we're moving on.
How can we be okay? I guess this is showing in January, end of January, we got 50,000. I don't think that's okay, but I mean, we might be okay, but I think we should give ourselves some slack. Is that what we're saying? 50,000 is okay to be having at the end of January?
Treasurer?
Again, that's prior to the tax payment, and it's still projection. I think it's gonna be safer. I think this is a conservative cushion from the way I am seeing the business manager budget those numbers.
Right, so moving on to our fiscal year 25 budget discussion. Interim director, do you want to explain what you've done, or did everyone already agree for what she did with the budget?
I would like to explain it.
Okay.
Okay.
You have the purple or the lavender worksheet that are the latest version of the budget. And right now, we stuck with the 0, 1, and 1.5% increase. And we use the hour structure number 3, which is the least amount of reduction. And through these changes that I'm going to talk about, we have a balanced budget at 1.5%. In line number 30, collections, we reduced it from 332,000 to just over 300,000. I would like to point out that comparing our closest district libraries, Meridian District spends 14% on collections and Ada County spends 11%. And right now in fiscal 25, we're only going to be spending 5% of our budget. So I do not recommend cutting our budget any further. Line 73, insurance was reduced from 105 to 85,000. And then line 74, legal services was reduced from 72 to 57,000. And just as a reminder, prior to the June budget meeting, we already cut various operational line items to about a total of $180,000.
I'm sorry.
The library open hours, again, we changed the staffing structure to structure number 3, with 5 libraries open 5 days a week and 2 libraries open 6 days a week. All libraries will have some morning hours to allow for children's literacy and late and evening hours to allow for people who are getting off work to come to the library. Line 21, library staff, was reduced just a tiny bit. It was reduced to $2,773,000. In the original budget published on May 30th, that number was $3,085,000. So the way that we got to that cut was to implement the open hour structure 3. And I think it's important to note that this does change the composition of our staff. We will have fewer positions. Those positions will have more hours to work every week. Some of them will move into being able to get retirement benefits, and some will be able to move into getting full benefits. So we are creating a smaller staff that is, I think, will be more reliable and more steady and more uniform because we're giving them more hours and offering more benefits. And again, once we get a budget published, I will work with legal counsel and we'll begin working on the staff restructuring. The salary line item also includes a 3% cost of living adjustment that was reduced from the original 4%. And we implemented longevity. And I know that, there have been some concerns about longevity pay. And like, are we just going to reward staff for doing the same job that they've done or possibly not address poor performance? But the library will continue to address poor performance. We have a policy for disciplinary issues, and we really want to strive to have our employees doing the absolute best they can. Also from the salary line item, the human resources generalist position was removed from the budget. And then for library outreach, we restructured, and that's now going to be called library services. It will have 3 full-time and 3 part-time staff that are existing outreach, youth services, and adult programming staff. The Discovery Bus and the bookmobile will be taken out of service, and those will be surplus. And then the Sprinter and minivan will be utilized for library service outreach. And then youth services will be restructured, and each library will have one full-time or part-time youth services staff that will be supervised by the library manager. And then staff members will focus on programming inside the library, and they'll also be responsible for circulation and customer service tasks. And traditionally, these positions have been doing a mix of library and outreach programming, so it will be a change for them. But I think we'll be able to hopefully continue to do enough outreach through the library services department that we, will be able to serve those in our community that way. So those are the highlights of the budget.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Do we have a dollar amount on the outreach? How much savings or what we're proposing because of, the Discovery Bus and the bookmobile, since they're gonna be out and surplus? How much money are we going to be saving or receiving because of that?
Yes, I believe the line item for the outreach vehicles was, I want to say it was close to 100,000, and it's now reduced to 10,000. So that's for those vehicles. I don't know if that's. And then we will be removing 2 outreach staff and placing them in library branches. So we'll be saving that way as well. Staff.
Okay. And then, also for the youth services, how much will we be saving? For some reason, I wrote down 98,000. I don't know if you got that information.
Yeah, that was originally proposed in June. And again, there will be some staff that will be laid off because we'll have to modify the kind of outreach that we do. But we are doing our best to try to keep as many of those staff. And then they'll just migrate and be managed by a library manager and also work circulation.
Thank you.
Trustee Fox?
I appreciate the work on it, but my goal was not to balance it at 1.5%. My goal was to get it down to 0 and then see what we wanted to do. Especially because we're gonna have no money left in savings, it looks like. I got a basic question, if I save it up and answer, but when does the bond end? I don't have visibility of that. Anyway, that we're paying less interest, so we must be coming pretty close to the end. Library equipment is still 90,000, line 44. And I don't know whether there's confusion right now on what insurance might pay because of, ICRIMP is reimbursing us for damaged equipment. I don't know if there's any of that. I'd like to see if we can cut that down 20,000. We still got it 93,000 this year, and that looks like one of the things that we're gonna hurry up and spend money on, but I don't know why we have to spend that much if we just this summer are going to spending, 60 or 70,000 to hurry up and catch up on that. But so that's one question, is what are we buying with library equipment that is so important? And then I'll just give you the 3 questions: the bond, the library equipment, and then copiers. Why is that increasing this year over last year? It's not that much money, it's $800 more, but why can't that decrease over last year instead of increase? Okay, so the 3 questions, that's 71.
Aaron Georgia?
Off the top of my head, I don't know when the bond is. I would have to get that information. It might be in one of the summary statements on the green sheets that Chanel writes out, but I would have to look at that. For library equipment, we are buying, items that were damaged with the iCredit money, right? So that is a completely separate fund and will be used for, furnishings and other things in the two libraries that are closed right now. So we then have a roughly $60,000 IT budget that we buy new equipment with every year. We also have facilities equipment that we have to buy every year, and then we have just general library equipment. So we already reduced from the original May budget, we cut the equipment line item from 95 to 90,000, so we cut that there. I would be very, very hesitant to cut it another 20,000. That would start impacting the quality of our IT and the replacement life cycle of our IT equipment. And we could maybe come to a middle of the road situation. But I would be very hesitant to do any, much in that line item. And I want to just repeat that we can't lump in what we're getting from iCredit because those are completely separate items that need to make us whole where we were before the floods happened. So it's completely separate money. And then for line item for the copiers, let me go. Our copier expenses so far this year have been slightly elevated each quarter, so that's why the copier went up for next year too, because we're trying to do across the board increases, knowing that our vendors. Trust us.
Just to follow up, what I was asking on the library equipment is basically is any of it that was scheduled to be replaced duplicated by the iCrimp payment? I don't want to just go buy something else because iCrimp is replacing something. And then if you can elaborate, what kind of equipment are we spending $90,000 on next year that we just got done spending some of it for the summer? Since it's delayed till summer, I'm wondering, can we delay things and go to 70,000?
So our IT purchase program is always in the summer. So we're not holding on to that money or delaying purchase. It's just something that happens in the summer. We have public computers that are at every single library. We have staff computers at every single library. We have all of the TVs that are in the meeting rooms. We have iPads, we have hotspots, we have so many things that we provide our customers. And so that again is about 60,000 of that 90,000 budget. And then we have facilities equipment that could be new tools, a new saw, a new hammer, like it just is what we need to operate. Like for example, we had to go buy, a new entrance rack. And because it's simply worn out. So something like that would fit into that category. And then we have about $10,000 that is for general equipment purchases. And I also think that the average lifespan for IT equipment is supposed to be 5 years, and I think we are stretched out to 7 years. So if we don't, buy every year, then that's just going to make that even longer, which is not the norm that we would want to be going toward.
Trust County?
Just a small item. Is it, I would guess we're gonna get maybe ten or maybe $20,000 in revenue. Is that thinking when we sell off our two buses or vehicles? Is that already factored in here somewhere?
That is not.
And we're not gonna get a fortune from, in that area, but I would say we probably get at least 10 grand collectively and possibly 20, but it's not enough. It may be able to move us from 1.5% increase down to 1%, but I don't know what else to cut in here personally. I'm not, I mean, if you've already sliced these down, unless someone else sees something to cut, that's a small source of revenue. Beyond that, I don't have any other questions at this time.
Yeah, that, excuse me, surplus vehicles could go towards the carry forward balance. Interim director?
And I think I said this last time, but, you know, we have to cut about 13% of our budget. If you know, look at the operating costs of around 5 to 6 million and then needing to find around $730,000. So this is, I think, draft 7 that myself and Janelle have worked on. So like, it is literally, I don't know where else to make cuts. And like our last meeting, I thought it was agreed that 1.5% would be acceptable. You know, if one thing to consider is that the board could publish a number, like could publish the budget at 1.5%, and we could continue to try to whittle down another 25,000 to get us to 1%, because they can always publish a higher number and make a reduction without having to go through the hearing process again. And maybe it's where we just start shaving off, you know, like 1% from every line item. I don't know if that's what the board would want to do.
I'm in a total agreement with the interim director. Trustee Boss?
Line item 80, storage and office rental. I think, I don't remember asking about that, maybe explain, but we were 4,500 last year. Now we're 24,750, 24,000, almost 25. I thought we were ending our contract. Is that because there's 1 month or 2 months of still using it until the library opens? That's why it's up that high. So if we could hurry this up and move, we could cut that or not spend it.
We wanted to be a little cautious, you know, and not have to be in the hole right started. So that's what we have. I think that's 4 months worth of rental. So that would put us into the end of February, no, end of January, which I would really hope I then hear
I had a question about line 81. How much did we actually spend last year?
out. Oh, in fiscal year 2020.
Or-
That you're at.
Yes. Fiscal year 24.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen.
Don't know those.
We have the green, that's the green sheet. I wouldn't say what it was at the end of June, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't have green sheets.
I didn't bring with me, but
Training and conference.
so was where we are as of the end of June.
What was your question?
Just how much we actually spent. So I guess this fiscal year is not over yet.
I said,
How
I
much
was like
do-
81.
Yes.
Okay,
How much have we actually spent this year?
Negative
Yes.
1,900.
Okay.
19.
We could go down on that lineup.
Why is it negative?
We got grants, and like people submitted for grants, and then those were paid back to us for the training that was expended.
Trustee Fox?
Back on line 81, or line 80, storage and office rental. If this is because we're renting that building, I thought ICRIP was paying for that. Why is that in our budget? Isn't it coming out of the set aside 675,000 ICRIP money?
So, that is on kind of like a month by month basis. So ICRIP originally, I think, was only gonna pay like 2 months. And then they said, no, we're gonna pay 4 months. And so we just, I believe, got it extended through November. So if they do continue to extend it, then we would not spend that line item. But we don't have a guarantee that they're going to do that.
So it's not this 600 on the estimated sheet, ICRIP funds that are designated for Athol and Post Falls, 654,000 left to be spent. It's not in that.
Up through November is.
And so this is, the 24,000 is after November? But I didn't include it else.
Trustee Henley?
A question, aspect of the budget. Does it still appear that the insurance for particularly Post Falls restoration is still gonna come in within budget, within what ICRIP is made of think? Is there any big unknown threat out there still?
And to my knowledge, there is no unknown threat. I think we're going to be in budget, if not maybe a little under budget. So, our facilities manager is working really closely with the project manager. And anything that is unknown or potentially scary, we're told about immediately. And there just hasn't been much of that.
Good.
Trustee Henley?
Make another general comment. I'd be happy to get this down to 1%. I'm not seeing enough stuff to cut to go down to 0 or even 0.5%. Not that we have a number for that, but 1.5% isn't the end of the world. 1% I think would be acceptable in general if we could get to that. If it was enough, it's only $24,000 worth of either increased revenue or decreased expenses to get to that, but I'm not trying to, at this point, unless someone can see something, I don't see us getting down to 0. I mean, there is inflation out there, things cost money, and I'm not trying to increase the taxes out there, but unless someone sees some other cuts or sources of revenue, I'd say we're in the 1 to 1.5% range, and I do like the proposal, if we can't cut anything today, to publish it at 1.5%, and then if we can reduce it after that, but if we can do that today, that's even better.
Sounds like we could reduce, lines 80 and 81. That makes sense.
I would not reduce line 80 until we know for sure the end of the project and that ICRIP's gonna pay the entirety of that. That would make me nervous because then we'd have to come up with that money somewhere. I do think we could reduce line 81. We've already taken it to 14,000. You know, we could take it. Like, what? We have to be a learning organization. We have to have opportunities for staff. Like, this is how we grow and do better.
Getting burns.
We have to pay and then get reimbursed. But it's your decision. I mean, if that's what you're choosing.
Trustee Campbell?
So did we say how much of the training for the previous year, how much money we did spend? A ballpark? I don't have my green sheet, so negative?
Negative
Negative
1,900.
1,900, okay.
Yeah, for 23, I don't know what that amount.
Okay. would it be safe to cut that down to 10,000 or even based on how much we spent on the previous year?
Since our training options are severely limited due to the non-association with ALA, that's why we didn't spend money last year. There's a lot of scared activity around that. I would recommend 10,000. But if the board wants to go less than that, then, that is what it is. We've also been in sort of like a state of survival. And it'd be great, to have a director who does provide some stability and encourages learning. It would be nice to have a fund in the budget to do that so we can get out of the survival mode,
Trustee Campbell?
So on the grants, even though when the director comes in, is there opportunities to file for grants that weren't planned that could bring in extra money? That would take care of training, or if we were to cut it down to 10,000, that.
There are, yes, like, Commission for Libraries, sometimes for grants. We used to, pay for staff day out of that fund. And I do believe there is a grant from Idaho Commission for Libraries simply for staff day. So we would have to, get creative and, use that money. Because if we dropped it down to 5,000, we would either have a staff day and no training, or we would not have staff day and do training randomly.
I'm sorry, and what day did you say that we would know ICRIM paying for storage?
November.
Okay, trustee Boss?
I would like to change the storage to, just 1 month. Would that move it down to 14,000? It's already paid for up to November, including November, right?
Yes, so let me just get there.
So that's line item 80. And you were having it for extra in there for, you said beyond November, December and January. We just paid up to, or budgeted for up to December.
It's about 5,000 a month. So if you wanted to do that calculation, you could reduce that amount.
So that's like 4 months in there then, 20,000. I thought ICRIP was already paid, agreed to pay up to November, up through November.
Yeah.
And you said this was budgeted to December and January. So if it's 5,000 a month, then there
We
should
can
only be,
reduce $15,000.
well, is this FY 24 budget, 4,500, is that still some other storage that we have regardless? So 4,500 is the base. So 20,000 above that is 4 months, if it's 5,000 a month. And I don't think we need that much.
You only want 1 month, is what you're saying. So we,
If it's already calculated that ICRIM's paying through November,
they are.
then let's just do 1 month, take 15,000 out and just do to December, because the contractors are saying you're gonna be done
We hope.
before the end of November.
I mean, we still have to allow for bringing all the books and stuff
Right.
back, which could in itself take another month.
But that'd be December. And ICRIM might pay for that, so I'd like to reduce that down 15,000 to,
Just
9,750.
So we have agreement on that, or further comments or questions, reducing line 80 down to 9750?
Yeah.
That was really committed.
I'm thinking so.
Sounds like
That's what, 2 months worth, right?
3 months.
3 months.
9,000? I thought you said it was $5,000 a
Well-
month.
Taking out.
Oh, we're
15,000.
reducing it by, oh, no, okay, I'm sorry. What's that bring us down to?
9,750, right, subtract 15,000,
I can take that risk.
it's a low risk, so.
Yeah,
Treasurer?
I always think it's better to be safe than sorry and just maybe even like 2 months at least extra, because again, if it's being published at the 1.5, you still have some time to see how much, another month or so, 2 weeks. So we really, it won't make that big of a difference.
Right, we don't have that much time to validate that.
I just know construction, maybe because of my husband, and I just always think they always, it's always better safe than sorry. It's such a large number that you don't want to necessarily feel like you got to come up with it in the beginning of the year. That's just my 2 cents.
Spots?
Well, if we come to that, then we got 675,000, 654,000 of iCrimp money sitting there, and we just reallocate what iCrimp did to that, is what I said. I'd say go for it, 15,000 off.
Aaron Brackett?
I mean, the ICRIP monies are allocated. So we don't just have money sitting there, but it's just a matter of like, do we have faith that either ICRIP is gonna pay for it, or do we have faith that we're gonna be moved in here by then? So if you're really wanting to get down to 1%, you can subtract 15,000 from that, and now you only have to come up with $921 more, $291 more. If you subtracted 4,000 from line 81, that would now give us $19,000 kind, and you don't need to find out $5,000. Which if you wanted, we could do like 1% off every repair and maintenance.
Well, it seems like the repair categories, I mean, they might have to be done. So we could potentially reduce line 81 down to 4,000 or 7,000 or something low. Trustee Hannah?
was there enough renovation done, let us say, for Athol to slightly reduce the repairs and maintenance, meaning if we would typically buy, I don't know what we would actually use it for, other than painting a wall, some kind of plumbing project or something, or if there's enough refreshment there, or even of the Post Falls facility, well, we already reduced that, I think. But if there's a little wiggle space, unless it was just carpeting and furniture, I don't know what else was done at Athol. I understand it was flooring and it was furniture. I don't know if there's anything else that was refreshed that would require less money for maintenance this coming fiscal year.
I'd like to ask our facilities manager to answer that, if you don't mind.
Without a difference?
Athol, I was just wondering if we could reduce that somewhat for, I didn't propose an amount, enough to balance it to get us down to 1%. How much are we short? We're still looking for 5,000?
I think
Sure.
that if we bring down the training to 10,000,
7,000, I think it's
you wanna go 7,000?
So
Okay,
that-
so then that, we're down to maybe a little over 2,000 that we have yet.
Sure.
Trust Spots?
So repairs and maintenance to Post Falls went up 10,000, went from 35,000 up to 45,000. But we kind of assume we're not gonna spend much on Post Falls since it's got reworked.
I would like to defer
I think-
to our facilities manager, but we also have things like air conditioning that needs to be worked on, and those things are not part of ICRIP. So that's what, if you could speak to that, that would be helpful.
There's definitely more risk in Post Falls because of the age back. I feel more comfortable reducing some of the outflow, and then like,
Oh, no.
14,000.
No, how much more do we need to balance?
Maybe about 3.
About 3,000.
3,000? We cut 3,000?
We need to cut actually
Oh,
$7,540.
Yeah.
That,
To balance at 1%? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if we take 15,000 from line 80 and 7 from line 81, that's 22,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
22,000.
okay, I'm sorry, you're right.
Yes, for the 1%, we were only short 24,291. So,
You think we can take that out of Apple?
Saving up,
$2,400.
I'm fine with that.
And we might have,
Yeah.
okay, what line is that again?
47. Oh, take 3,000 out, 11,000?
no, it's what, it's like,
24. Initially, it's 14,000.
yeah, how much we taking off?
Take off 3,000
$2,300 is what it's speaking.
2,800.
or 2,500 off.
You got to drop. You need 20,
Treasure?
You're 11,700, is that correct? From 14? I think it's what that's here. Or the Apple, are we taking 24 out of Apple or 23 out of Apple?
No,
2291 out of Athol would get you exactly the
mhm.
24,291 for the 1%.
Our new total for Apple would be approximately 11,000. That would get us 1%.
Right.
Okay, so are we in agreement for those three changes? Minus 15,000 for line 80, or subtracting, reducing line 81 by 7,000, and reducing 2291,
2,300. Yeah.
or it's 2,300. What do you prefer?
I mean, we can just do 20.
290. Make
Yeah,
it exactly
2291 and
Yeah.
balance of 1%.
Okay, so are we in agreement with those three changes?
Yes.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so, agreement with those three changes. Not harder. I'm through. Okay.
it would be nice to mention in the minutes that consensus was reached to publish at 1% increase.
Okay, so we have consensus to publish 1% with those three changes noted.
Plus fine.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Okay, yep, unanimous consensus.
Sure.
Yes, there's enough.
When we publish, we do it the same format that we published last year because I asked for that. The carry forward to be shown as a separate thing, so it's not money. Well, anyway, the way we did it is good. Instead of saying it's an 8, publishing it as a $8 million budget, it kind of comes out 6 million with, and carry forward as a line item added.
We will mimic last year's publication.
Because that was copied from Bonner County libraries. They did it that way, the example sheet.
Okay, so are we done?
Wow.
Quite early.
Are we?
wow.
Yeah, like, well, you can probably get more if we start working. No.
Trustee Campbell?
Yeah, and I want to say thank you, Lindsay, so much because you had revised this for us already with the cuts that we had talked about earlier. That was so helpful for us to get this done.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you for being
I second
flexible.
that, even though we don't need second.
Yeah.
All right, if there is no further discussion on that topic, we will move on to number 8, set special and regular meeting dates. Trustee Hannah?
I guess my question is now, is the next meeting 6 P.M. for the budget hearing on August 8th? Is that where we are?
Yes.
Just want to make sure we confirm that.
Yes. Evening. Interim director.
And, we did, have 2 meetings established for the adoption of the budget. So one is, August 15th, which could be at the regular meeting. And then if that doesn't work, we could have August 22nd, a special board meeting simply for the adoption of the budget. So it's up to the board if they want to have another special meeting.
Okay, so if we don't think there's gonna be any more changes, then we can just do that with a regular meeting and not have another extra meeting. Which I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate.
So
Trustee Fox?
we need to continue with the minor card policy. I don't know if I want to put that,
Or that could wait until the regular meeting. What do
which,
you want to do?
which regular meeting, the following month?
The August regular meeting?
Yeah, I'm just saying the August 22nd would be more than just budget. Maybe is also a reason to do it. Yeah, see where we're at.
Trustee Campbell?
So since we have our attorney with us now, is it something to where we could, expand further on it here? Or because I'm very concerned about being sued in any way because of the restriction like you had mentioned earlier. So I was just wondering, since we have you here, if you can make it very clear to us what we can.
So can we go back to a previous item, even if it wasn't tabled? I mean, it's on the agenda,
It is, I
but
mean,
I don't,
I don't know. Maybe our attorney can answer that question.
We're small boards, right? So we don't follow Robert's rules. Officially,
we follow Robert's rules of order, but there are some
for small boards,
make
they
it,
work.
could make it easier for small boards.
That's 6 exceptions, that's all.
So is there
We don't need a
reason why-
second, we don't.
Right. The reason why we can't go back to an item that wasn't,
That's not part of the small board.
Well, what's coming to mind is the adjournment provisions related to a time set. Like we have a,
2 hours.
it's almost like we have time set because we have a break at 4 and then we set out how many minutes. So that's kind of a gray area for me. And so typically if you set a time, then you would need to approve that as a motion. I mean, I don't think it's an open meetings law issue because it's on the agenda, we're still there, but if someone came here for that specific topic and then left, we brought it back up and they wanted to be here for that. If you could do, they could present an issue.
But because it's available on the web and the public doesn't participate, is that an issue? Because it's available to hear what's discussed and there's no rapport back and forth with the audience and the board.
No.
I thought we let the interim speaker,
Yeah.
director speak, while you.
Years ago.
And I think it would be really beneficial if we waited to discuss this policy further until members of the public had a time for public comment. We had it on the agenda at the last week's meeting, but no one really knew what was happening with the policy. So the first time they're going to be able to make public comment is in August. And I think it's healthy for the organization to wait for a lot more discussion until we listen and to what the public has to say.
That's probably a good idea. Plus, you know, the fact that if they did come here for that item and then missed out, if it were me, I would be upset. So, yeah. it'd be
And
great.
the other issue is that it could constitute an amendment of an agenda, which would require, I don't know if it's that serious, but if it gets into that 74-204 concern, it could be an issue.
Trust Bus?
And frankly, I would like to spend a little time working up an option either for another policy or change to what we've got to address the concerns of the open access and what I feel is the risk of the adult books that are open.
Okay. So then what are our feelings about the possible budget adoption either at a regular meeting, August 15th, or having a separate session on the 22nd?
I think we could do both on the 15th, as far as the budget adoption and the library cards.
Okay, trustee Fleming, Ken?
Also, if we have a budget hearing on the 8th and there are no issues with the public, and when I hear or look at it, and I don't think we'd have to spend any time on it on the 15th, would we, other than just say it's adopted?
Yeah, as long as we're satisfied with it. Trustee Boss?
So the idea is if something comes up, I think if we want to reduce or change line items, but I'd say put it for 10 minutes, and if we get it done. But otherwise, don't cancel that other meeting for now, that we can decide that at the regular meeting.
Okay, do you guys want to wait to cancel it then?
I can't say which one, the 8th and 15th and 22nd.
August 22nd. So keep it on there for now, but we could conceivably,
Yeah.
hopefully get done with it. 22nd?
We have the 15th and the 22nd, don't we?
15th is our regular meeting.
I'm sorry, oh, yeah, you're right,
And the
yeah, I would
22nd.
like to keep the 22nd. Yes, I'm sorry, I moved up, yes.
Okay.
Easier to cancel than to start.
No. So Charles, I just want to make sure I'll just put August 22nd special meeting to adopt as needed. Is that okay? Or notes?
It's fine with me.
I just want to make sure. Okay.
Well,
Okay,
sure.
yes, response?
I see it as on the regular meeting, the 15th. If we do adopt the budget and done, at that point, maybe we could decide to keep the meeting and change it for minor cart policy or cancel it or whatever. So I don't even change anything until the 15th as far as the purpose.
Yeah, because it won't be,
Okay, so we're leaving it as is. Yeah. All right, so there are no other discussion for special or regular meeting dates. We will move on to the highly prized item. Adjournment.
I moved to be adjourned.
Oh, it has been moved that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Hi.
All right.
Okay, it is unanimous. We are adjourned.